okay. All right, are we back? Sorry about that, folks. I don't know. We do have storms blowing in here today, so that's probably what's going on with the Wi-Fi here. So I do apologize for that. Figures we've had this issue the last couple of weeks, and it looks like we're going to get hammered by some more storms here these next couple of weeks here. So we'll figure things out here on these streams and kind of see how things go here. But we'll continue the discussion here in a little bit. We'll wait for some more people to come in here, and we'll do this. I am looking into a wired connection on this. We've tried that before. That's worked kind of okay with this one. Back at the old headquarters with the blue wall behind me, that was a little bit more of an option, but it's not really working so much at this place here. But hopefully we'll figure this out. Yeah, Wi-Fi dropped again, Ben. Yeah, same deal here. So this is going to be a two-parter once again. I do apologize, folks. We'll get into things again here in just a moment. I was kind of rambling here anyway, but a lot to ramble about for sure. Alrighty. So, yeah, so just jumping back into the discussion from part 4. I think where the connection was lost was talking about the transition between the final corner, the final lap of the Daytona 500, and then the week that followed afterwards, and both of those moments being equal in scale. It was asked during the release of part 3 by a couple people about why not just keep things going? Why not just show what happened off the last lap? Couple of reasons, again, and the first reason, of course, is like what I was kind of starting to talk about before, that once that accident happened, it was very clearly the end of one thing and the beginning of something else. I mean, even before Michael Waltrip reached the finish line, that was the massive difference, and it stopped really being about the race and who was going to win it and who was running well, and started to really become about the tragedy itself, which is why I kind of cued things back a little bit in part 4 and kind of added some more context to that. I think that was the better way to go with that, certainly. The other thing is that really the alternative is there's so much momentum in that story, as there had been in the first 3 parts, that if I kept going with that, I would have had to just keep going with everything all the way through Rockingham in that one episode. And it's already been a tall ask to have people be watching the video where it's an hour and a half or 2.5 hours. Never mind doing this like every week for a month. If I basically created a 4-hour video that covered all of that, I think it would be a real hard thing for people to be watching even more, especially with that jarring transition between those two different tones. So, and again, there's going to be people that aren't going to want to see it at all. That's the other part of it. I know I've handled that differently from other videos that have discussed similar issues, like Until Lap 11, for example, and how it was handled in terms of showing the actual accident itself or how that was featured. The other part of it is, especially with the Earnhardt accident, that last corner and the run to the finish line, everybody can picture that. Even if you're not like a huge NASCAR fan, you're probably still familiar or you've come across the video on YouTube of Darrell Waltrip excitedly calling Michael home off the corner, which is, again, why in my video I just showed the images of that, and you don't hear the sound, but you could picture it. And you could even picture it in the silence that's after the end of part 3 there, too. So, and again, I think that's another way of constructing the story there, too. So, yeah, I think that was definitely another way to look at it there. But yeah, I was very surprised at how long part 4 became ultimately. And going through a lot of the footage there, I mean, that was certainly a challenge at the same time too. But it was important, and there's a lot. And again, big thanks to everybody on YouTube who has archived a lot of this footage and made it available to see, whether it was the celebration of live services that were done that Thursday, or the actual practice and qualifying sessions for the Rockingham race itself. I know Dave W. archived a lot of that. Scott Allen Brown, I believe, had some of those videos too. Many other channels have been archiving that, and I created a playlist that should be in the caption of the video too, so you can check out the full version if you're interested in more of what happened during, say, the memorial service or qualifying or anything. That's all in there at the same time too. But there's a lot of big moments, and I think a lot of profound moments, certainly. I mean, the way, how visible Bill France Jr. is for a lot of these events, and how he was really, getting the spotlight just as much as anybody in the aftermath of this. And he and Dale Earnhardt, of course, were very close friends during his career at that point. And Dr. Steve Bohan, and how much more attention he was getting as being one of the doctors that was treating him, and ultimately providing the first-hand description of what was going on at the Halifax Medical Center after the accident, and which people became kind of more central to it. This is not the end of the story, and it's another reason that I decided to continue the series past just the Rockingham race. Obviously, there's going to be more revelations about Bill Simpson and about the seatbelt, and certainly the investigation. These are things I'd like to still have be a part of future episodes. Again, the focus is going to be on the Cup Series itself and what happened in each of the races. That's going to be kind of the framework, if you will, for each of the episodes. But certainly the other context of other news that was happening at the time and building from one episode to the next. I think that's kind of the big way to do that. So again, big thanks to you guys for your support on that, and hope you look forward to that as well. I don't have a timetable in terms of when those are going to be released. But right now my priorities, and I think this got cut off in the last video there. I'm working on the Derek Cope book, working on getting the audio book of that done. I have a Field Fillers episode that is about halfway done that I want to kind of finish after that. That'll probably bring us pretty close to the start of the season in February, at which point I've already agreed to now do 2 starting grids during speed weeks that week. I like doing the Daytona 500 anyway, because that's just traditionally, especially since 2008, doing the old BSGN starting grids. But the Patreon members that have joined in significant part because of this series, we reached the threshold to do another starting grid, and they almost unanimously, to do the Xfinity Series race at Daytona. So I'll be doing a starting grid video for Xfinity and Cup. I'm not sure how much turnaround time I'm going to have on that. So at worst, it would just be an audio recording of it, but still made available on YouTube. The trick is, of course, getting it out before the race starts, of course. But we'll see how that works out. We're actually very close to getting to doing another starting grid video. So we've almost reached the next stretch goal on that. So again, big thanks to everyone on the Patreon there. I've been mailing out newsletters and stickers to everybody here. I got a few more. I actually had to order some more this past week because I got about 7 or 8 others I need to send out here. So again, big thanks to everyone who's joined up on there. And I intend to get some more content for you guys here as well to be enjoying. I definitely want to kind of beef up the $10 level and kind of get some more exclusive videos in there for you guys. We got a few videos in there right now and some other content for that level. But I want to kind of add some more to that there at the same time. And also just kind of, now the community there is kind of growing to kind of also get, more feedback about stuff people are looking for, or what kind of content they'd like, or if there's other, things we could be working on to, with the NASCAR brand, I guess you could say in general, to kind of get things going. Stuff people are interested in. I'm totally open to ideas. I try to think of stuff on my own, but I'm certainly not, turning down suggestions from other people there at the same time. So there's definitely that whole deal there too. But so a lot of things coming together here this same year. I think this is a good springboard into it. I think it's also, I'm glad that I got part 4 done right after the first 3. I think it would have been kind of messed up to make people wait for this 4th part that long. Any longer than just that 1 week already. I think it's a more comfortable pausing point before getting into more episodes after that, rather than leave it at the apprehension at the end of part 3. So that was something. It was kind of, I'm kind of recovering from that a little bit here, because it was real thrash to get that one done. I basically got the first draft of that done just right after New Year's this year, and with the release set for, I think the public release was the 4th. for the Patreon members, that was really kind of the push. And then I got some big thanks also to the Patreon to make sure that I was able to kind of make some final tweaks to it to make sure that, if there's any errors in there, there's still some things I would have done differently. I always find that with all these videos, like, I should have done this or that. But they caught a couple of things that would have really ticked me off, like audio that was out of sync and stuff. So big thanks to them on that. And, I appreciate the feedback on that, because these videos in particular, I really want to make sure these are as good as they could possibly be. I'm again, blown away by the response by it. There was a great thread on Reddit. People were very excited about it there. I'm very relieved, because I knew this was going to be easily, certainly after the September 11th episode, I imagine that's going to be every bit as difficult as part 4 was. But this one, for sure, for covering what happened during that and trying to condense it down as much as possible, was something I was very, I was uncertain of. I felt pretty good about it. It took a few revisions there to get it where I wanted to be, but I'm very pleased with the response to it. And again, big thanks to you guys for that there too. So, but yeah, if you haven't seen the video yet, it is available. Of course, all 4 parts are up there now. Part 5 is in the works. We'll get information on that. And as I mentioned earlier too, of course, Rise of the Field Fillers is coming back. I have an episode about halfway done and an interview request for an episode after that. So I'm hoping to kind of get that going. But luckily with 500 days now, I got stuff that I can produce in between while I'm getting those together, because the Field Fillers ones, the first few came together pretty quick, but I really lucked out on that because a lot of those interviews I was able to get done about the same time. And that's kind of been the difference here. I saw a question in the last stream before it shut down here asking about the Stanton Barrett situation. Basically with that one, it's not really a situation. It's, we had an interview. I interviewed both Stanton, and I've interviewed his team owner, Dave Watson, or team co-owner, Dave Watson. Sadly, he's since passed away. He passed away in June. So I'm very thankful I was able to speak with him. He's a great guy. Gave some great stories about growing up with Stanton and his experience in the sport. And I think really from my discussions with Stanton, and we've talked a couple times, it really became a much bigger and bigger story. Certainly involving his father, Stan Barrett, who is also a stuntman and NASCAR driver, just like Stanton was, and how busy they really are, how active they've been in so many, forms of media, whether, it is racing or their stunt work in Hollywood, or, they're active sportsmen as well. His mother is a championship skier. There's so many things that are, that they're involved in, that when my last discussion with Stanton is, we really basically just scratched the surface. I approached this episode the same way that I did with all the other ones. But when I last talked with him, he said, like, oh, well, hey, we got to make sure, let's put this in there. Let's put this in there. And I'm like, oh, absolutely. But we need to make sure we do some interviews here. And then I can get the full story on this to make sure it's as good as it could be. So I'm very confident in what I do have on that episode, but I'm not confident that what I have of that episode is a full episode. And I know, like what my English professor told me in college, he said, look, you're never going to have everything. I know I'm not going to have everything on this story either. But a lot of the leads that he kind of started giving me there, I'm thinking, well, I kind of like to learn more about that too. So hopefully something works out on that. It could end up being, I don't know if it's going to be a field filler episode. I don't know if it's going to end up being a 2-parter like the Carl Long one was. I don't know if it's instead going to be moved differently and it's going to be like part of the driver profile series. So maybe it's going to be separated out, because the tone, I think, is it's kind of turning a little bit in our discussions there. And it's kind of, the 2004 season doesn't play as big of a role in his story as it did with the others. I think that was the other challenge that came up there. So we're working on that. And I hope I'm not telling too many tales out of school here, because he's been very supportive. He's a really cool guy. We've had great discussions. I don't want to make it seem like he's being difficult, because that's not the case. But I think that with the other videos, 2004 played a very big role in a lot of these other drivers' careers. Morgan Shepherd, maybe less so, obviously, for how long he'd been in the sport. But we had a very good interview with him, very long interview with him. Same thing with Andy Belmont in that same sense there. But I think further work is going to be needed to be done to get that ready to go. And I don't really want to hold up the Field Filler series more than I already have. We're already coming up on a year since the Hermie Sadler one. I get so many messages about the Field Filler series, which is really great because, I mean, they perform pretty well as videos themselves, but it really surprises me how many people are that into it, even after the 500 Days series here. And so I'm glad I was able to kind of get something out here in the meantime and then work on that. But that's the goal going forward, is that to kind of relieve that pressure a little bit and allow future episodes to go. So this next episode is basically what I was going to have after the Stanton Barrett episode. And I'm going to kind of go with that and probably have that be the next episode that I post. And then that'll be kind of where we're going from there. So that's basically the story on that. So, and again, it could just be that the Stanton Barrett thing just pops up and then suddenly we get it done and then boom, then, the focus entirely shifts to that. We'll keep things pretty open at that end. So that's kind of what we're looking at. And so I think this year is going to be kind of a bit of a transition with a lot of these different projects and trying to get some of them done. The 500 Days was the first one I really wanted to get done. But then these other ones here kind of fill in there too. So yeah, you have too much. I agree. Yeah, it's too much. But I basically the Stanton Barrett one has kind of been on the back burner anyway. And I'm going to kind of look at some of these other things here too and figure that out. Getting the Cope book done has been something that's been on the back burner already. So I'm kind of moving that one off here, and we'll get that going. But I think after this year, and that's the other, and again, once again, as I mentioned, I think this got cut off in the first video too. That's the other reason I kind of scaled back on the trackside coverage, because that was going to be too much. I really wanted to do North Wilkesboro this year. We were making some plans on that, but I think I'm not sure if I'd be able to do it justice, because it's just, I got too much that's just on my plate here. And hopefully we get through it this year, things kind of calm down a little bit, and then maybe next year we start doing some more trackside stuff here. And that'd be great. But we're still doing some of that. We're still going to do a couple races here, but they're going to be spaced out a bit more between February, June, and November. That I think that's going to be a lot easier, and I'd be able to get a lot more out of those here in the meantime. So, so we'll see how that's going. So that's going to be kind of the situation here. So the goal with 500 Days isn't to really add even more to the plate and make it even harder to produce stuff. It's kind of to be kind of filling the gaps there along the way. And I think that's going to be, especially once the Cope book is done and we start kind of focusing on promoting it rather than writing it, that's going to be kind of the focus there in between. It's kind of producing some more stuff on the channel. I'm very pleased with where the channel is right now. We've gained 1,000 subscribers, I believe, since in the last month, which is really since the episode started. So I think we're up to close to 17,000 at this point. I don't like to obsess too much about the numbers here, but it's undeniable. I certainly want to point it out here to contextualize my thanks to everybody for their support of the videos. We're getting some good traffic on these videos here. I understand YouTube has had some kind of issue with view counts or something like that. So hopefully once that gets straightened out, maybe that'll help, these videos in the algorithm or whatever. But I'm very pleased that people are talking about them and people are sharing the links. And my goodness, between, a lot of the news that's happened here, even this week, I think that's going to keep them very much in the discussion there. So a challenging time in the sport, undeniably. To say the very least. But an important time, I think, that's worth talking about. And I'm very pleased that both people who were around at that time and remember that time, and people who didn't, people who have grown up since then. You can have fully grown adults now that weren't even alive when Earnhardt's wreck happened, and to try to make that story as real as possible. And again, it much like what I mentioned with 3 Before February in comparison to Rick Houston's work on Firestorm. And again, I think that these are things that complement each other. These are things that I think the best way to grasp what happened, I want to kind of just add to that. It doesn't replace anything. I think Michael Waltrip's Blink of an Eye is a tremendous film. I thought Fox Sports 1 did an admirable job with The Day when they covered the events surrounding the 2001 500 itself. I think if you take all that together, hopefully with this series, it can really kind of add more detail to that and kind of make that event a little bit more real. I think documentaries are probably the closest you can get to a time machine there in terms of trying to bring people back to that era. So hopefully it's something that that definitely accomplishes that at the same time. So a couple other stories that have sprung up from this week. Talked a bit about Kevin Harvick, certainly in part one, and the circumstances of his debut in the Cup Series, and of course now the news that started to be kind of rumored. I believe it was back on like Monday or Tuesday, and then was confirmed just earlier this week that Kevin Harvick is going to be retiring from full-time Cup competition at the end of the 2023 season. They had the Forever logo that I guess is going to be his equivalent of the Fan Appreciation Tour deal. Apparently he was thinking about just stepping aside from the Cup Series at the end of last year, but has decided to take one more season here and wrap things up in the 4-car this year. So giving himself another shot at a second championship to go with his from 2014, and perhaps a second Daytona 500 to go with his win in 2007. And especially given how well he performed in the closing stages of the regular season last year, if he can have a slightly better start to the season this year, who knows how he performs at that point later on this season, but that'll definitely be another story to follow. The other one that definitely sprung up from 500 days is the story, of course, Frankie Muniz, and now the story that was confirmed earlier today, but that he's actually going to be apparently driving the exact same chassis that Sterling Marlin drove in the 2001 Daytona 500, CGR 005, which was produced, I think it was in 9 days over the offseason, and it was Sterling Marlin's car that won the 2001 Twin 125s Daytona, and of course was part of that finish of the 500 there, coming back from the flat tire, missing the big wreck as a result of that, and then being in the middle of the battle for third place on the final lap of the event there. A lot of history with that car. NASCAR Man did a fantastic video on that really breaks down what's happened with that car in the years since then, and another fascinating connection that's coming with it there. So, and I wasn't sure if Frankie Muniz was going to be made aware of this, but apparently, yeah, he noticed the trend on social media and a lot of the traffic about it there, and is very much intrigued by that from the discussion there. I mean, certainly, you see from 500 Days that he met with Ken Schrader and Dale Earnhardt, and apparently, according to the interviews, also met with Sterling Marlin the morning of the Daytona 500. In fact, one report was that Marlin actually signed the Ken Schrader jacket he was wearing. I didn't see that footage in the clip that I used in the video there, but again, another tremendous aspect to the story there. I mean, you just never know with history. I mean, sometimes things go full circle in different ways, and now him driving for the Rhett Jones effort in the ARCA race this year, that's going to be something pretty incredible. Hopefully, he gets some decent coverage there during the week itself. I can't imagine at this point it wouldn't be. So that would be another one to kind of talk about there too. Seeing it in the chat here as well, I see M just posted it here. The 500 Days thing being used with Kyle Larson's upcoming bid at the Indy 500. That may well be a countdown to maybe something that Lastbro and I are going to have to check out if we kind of build things up here towards 2024. Whether maybe we make an attempt to check out the Indy 500 or do the Coke 600 or something like that. That would be pretty cool. And check out at least one half of Kyle Larson's double. I always told myself if I ever did the Indy 500, the first time I would do it, I'd probably just do it as a fan because I've never been there. I've never been to Indy for any events there or anything like that. So I probably wouldn't do the media thing the first off the bat there. I have some experience with IndyCar because we did the IndyCar championships at Sears Point there a few years. So maybe at some point there, it'd be pretty cool to do maybe some last place coverage from the Indy 500. But in the meantime there, probably the first time going, I'd kind of like to see what the fan experience is and kind of take part in that. In the alternative, maybe doing the Coke 600 would be cool. If we do that, I'd like to do the media aspect of that for sure, because you can have some really interesting last place battles in the longest race of the year, and that'd be another thing to kind of look at too. But I was intrigued by that with Kyle Larson running the number. I guess he's with the McLaren outfit there for the IndyCar effort next season. That's gonna be really exciting. And I think it was NASCAR Man or Seth Eggert that were putting it out, talking about renaming this the Andretti Double in honor of the late great John Andretti, the first driver to do the 600 and the Indy 500 the same day in 1994. And I think that'd be great. I think maybe call it the Andretti Double would be great to kind of have some kind of I mean it's colloquially called the double already. But yeah, maybe kind of add that little aspect to it. I think that would be pretty neat to see at the same time here. So that would be something to check out. But yeah, I mean, tremendous news on that. Yeah, things are definitely picking up speed here in these next couple weeks. I haven't really watched anything from the Chili Bowl or anything. I heard about that driver that had the incident the other night, and the latest reports sound like they're positive in his recovery. So certainly that's good to be hearing about. But I haven't really been following that too much. I'm kind of counting down the days more to the 24 hours of Daytona here, and kind of starting off that portion of the schedule here. Looks like we're getting pretty close to that now that the Cadillac teams have kind of revealed their primary color paint schemes that they're going to be running on their cars this year. That's going to be pretty exciting, and that's always a weekend I really enjoy. That was the one night shift I didn't mind doing back in my previous job, so that was a lot of fun. And I haven't followed week to week or event to event the endurance racing, but that's probably the next place I would branch out to, because I've always had a soft spot for road course racing, and I like the a lot of the drivers that appear in that series. Sometimes you see them pop up in the Cup Series, whether it's at the increasing number of road courses we have this season or in other seasons too. So that'd be another one to kind of check out too. I don't know if I'd ever do any media work or something like that with that. I don't have a tremendous background in sports car racing, and a lot of the initials, your GTs, your GTRs, or GTDs, and whatever. I get just lost in a lot of that stuff. I mean, I get it. I get there's different divisions, your prototypes and all their stuff, and I guess now you got hypercars and all that other crazy stuff now. I need to do a ton of homework to kind of get ready for that. But at the end of the day, I think it's fantastic racing, and it's compelling to watch, and I think it's a lot of fun there too. So yeah, who knows? I mean, things are always a possibility there too. But I think 2024 is going to be a big year for the trackside coverage and kind of building that back up. I'd like to either do like a longer road trip again, kind of like what we did in 2019 with the East Coast deal. Traveling when we did the thing from Canada down to the Southern 500, that was tremendously successful and right at the start of our Patreon back then. So, we had a lot of people join up and draw their names on there, and made it through the storms that happened that kind of pushed that race very late into the night in Darlington. That was a lot of fun. I'd like to do another one of those again. And thanks again to the people that have joined the Patreon. I'm going to kind of save that up and kind of build that up towards next year, maybe do something big. I'd like to be able to do, something like that. Maybe do a cross-country trip or something like that to the 600, or to, try to do something like the Daytona 500, something like that I think would be huge. And, of course, do the last place coverage there and the door magnet or something like that. That's kind of what we're looking at for here. But I think this year will be a good build-up to that. And then hopefully the YouTube channel and the book will be at a good point from this year and kind of get things going. So this year is definitely going to be the year of kind of getting some work done and getting things going at that point. But I think that'll be really, really exciting for sure. And I hope hope things kind of go that way. Obviously, things are always. I try to keep things as flexible as I can here with things being the way they are. But I think we'll that'll be something to kind of look ahead towards for sure. So that'll be pretty neat. Yeah, doing the 500 Speed Week would be awesome. Yeah, I'm actually a pretty big fan of them compressing the schedule to fewer days. I know it's not as dramatic as it was when you see it described in 500 days, and you have that big space where qualifying is so much earlier, and you have a long time to kind of build up who's on the front row, and kind of have them be the greyhounds that everybody, the rabbit that everybody's chasing after. That would be kind of the big thing. Now what? I mean, qualifying is Wednesday night now, so it's kind of weird that you have it like right before the duels. But in terms of planning a trip and having it take a fewer days, for somebody like us that we're out on the opposite coast, that sounds like something that's a bit easier perhaps plan one of these days. So that would be a great thing to mark off the list. And that would be pretty cool. So we'll see. We'll see. It depends on how a lot of things are happening. I think a couple of things I would be intrigued by. I want to know if the Wilkesboro All-Star Race and the Busch Clash are going to come back in 2024. I know it seems strange to talk about that already since the season hasn't started. But it wasn't until Sears Point last year that we got the confirmation that the Clash was coming back this year. And now they're, of course, they're doing it at night. Sounds like they're going to have some local college students run like some cars that they're building at the local campuses, which I think is a great way to kind of tie in the local the student body there, since basically the race is like right in the middle of USC and the museums and stuff there. That would be kind of a cool feature to it. I hate that we're missing it, but it's okay. We're gonna catch that again. If they do it in 2024, we'll probably go back and do that again. As for the Wilkesboro thing, I hope they don't do it just the 1 year. I hope they do it again. And maybe, the offset of not doing it this year, if it becomes a points race, if it's a points-paying cup race, oh, man, I'd be all over that. I mean, if it's a 400-lap race there again, not just the All-Star race, if they're just doing this to put feelers out there and just kind of start doing the development. I've covered All-Star races before. One, we did the Texas race, what was that, 2 years ago? That was cool. I liked it. But, I like doing points-paying races if I can, especially with the NASCAR implications to it. The All-Star races and stuff have, like, their own deal to it. But I think that was another thing that kind of was a factor in kind of deciding that this year. So we'll see how things kind of work out on that end. I'd love it if they made that, if they made that a points race in 2024, if they made it a 400-lap race, I mean, man, that would be a hard one to turn down. I would love to cover that. And then actually go back to doing a race there where it would be the first last place finisher of a 400-lap race there since Derek Cope, the same subject of the book there, which was September of 96 would be the situation. So that would be something kind of looking at there too. So I think next year, the 2024 schedule, I think is going to be pretty eye-opening. And I think I feel pretty confident in saying that even before this season starts, because I think this year is going to be kind of a year that NASCAR is kind of feeling things out. Certainly the street course, deal in Chicago. We'll see how that goes. Again, I didn't really have that on the schedule this year. I think I was already kind of willing to kind of wait and see how that goes. And if that's going to be something that NASCAR is going to do more of, or is it going to be something that's even conducive to the cars in the first place? As to the Clash, are they going to rotate that between different stadiums, or are they just going to stick with doing the LA Coliseum? I mean, I'm certainly happy that it's something that's maybe a half day's drive from here at NASCAR headquarters. But I know that, they're probably looking at other venues and other stadiums, and would it be different configurations? I don't know. That's another thing to look at too. So I think, it definitely feels like they're experimenting with a lot of things. I think they're going to start experimenting, with more, what they're going to do with the championship and the championship race, and maybe start looking at things on that end. Because at least it feels that way, because it feels like they're really trying to see, what the draw is of these different venues. And if it's, maybe not a second date, but, moving tracks to, maybe more profitable dates. So we'll see. We'll see. So a lot of exciting things coming right here. But definitely got a lot on the plate this season. And but now that this part of 500 days is cleared up, that was a big thing that I wanted to clear up, especially before the season started. And I'm very happy to have accomplished that. So hopefully that'll be a good indication of where we're going from here. And just kind of, I know I got some questions here about, burnout and stuff like that. Don't worry. I'm not planning on getting all this done in 1 week or in just this year. It's absolutely part of a much larger plan. Field fillers isn't going to be done this year. 500 days isn't going to be done this year, and I'm not aiming to do that. So I appreciate the concern. I know that's very important. I've been burned out before, but I'm certainly not looking to do anything like that. So that's kind of where we are on that end there. Gosh, I guess other things to talk about. I didn't really make notes on my phone here, so I'm kind of trying to do it off the cuff here. I guess you can talk about the Legacy Motor Group deal. Jimmy Johnson's involvement with the Petty GMS team. Still not a fan of the name. I kind of like the Motor Group thing. Like, that kind of almost makes it sound like an old classic car group, very hoity-toity. kind of aspect. Not exactly what I would call the Petty Enterprises effort. I think it's the Petty team has always been very salt of the earth. Has more in common, I think, even in its glory days with independent organizations than a super team out there. Even though they were absolutely the most dominant effort out there, and during a whole different period of the sport, and were just crushing people under their feet. I mean, ultimately, it was a family organization. Whether it was Lee, whether it was Richard, or at the times Kyle drove for him. Obviously it turned out to be something much bigger than that with Richard's success, and everything. But in the time that they've really kind of shrunk down since then, it's been, kind of returning to those roots a little bit. Although, unfortunately, really, the Petty Enterprises that we knew back then really hasn't existed since 2009. It basically kind of shut down at that point. And, the 43 car just kind of became part of the Evernham team. And, that whole divergent timeline has kind of been what we've been basing things off of. So it could be argued that really the 43 and the 42 teams that we have today really don't have that much to do with Level Cross or Randleman or the whole effort out there. That it is just separated off from it. So really, is it a big deal that they're changing the name? I don't know. I mean, I guess it's a way to come to terms with it. I like that they're not changing the Petty font, that at least they're using that. I mean, that would, I think if they started doing that and got to the point where, you already have a radically different car, they're not running, they're running Chevrolets now. They're not even running, I mean, obviously Pontiac doesn't exist anymore, but, and you don't have Mopar involvement in the sport like you did back in the day. But, I think it's going to be very hard to not call it the Petty team. I think it's going to be very easy to just kind of say, oh, he drives for the Petties, rather than say, oh, he drives for Legacy Motor Group. I don't know. Or Motor Club. I don't know. I don't know. It's going to be an adjustment, and I don't want to sound like, constantly the guy that doesn't like change. But I don't think I'm alone on this one. It seemed like that was what the kind of the trend of the traffic was earlier this week, and how all that played out. So, yeah, I don't know. But, yeah, I think that's, gosh, I mean, this, well, and now we got this other news today, the 2311 thing. I don't know how far to tread on this because, I mean, I guess, what was it? Jordan Bianchi was posting some updates on this. Where is it? Yeah, Jordan Bianchi on there. The Athletic reporting Travis Pastrana to enter the Daytona 500 in a car fielded by 2311 Racing. Definitely surprising. Not what I would have expected, for sure. I guess it's not official yet. There was a teaser that 2311 posted showing the back of somebody's head. I was kind of hoping for Carl Edwards. I don't think it was. It didn't have Carl doesn't really grow his hair out that long, unless he has since the time he hasn't driven the Cup Series. Didn't really look like Elio Castroneves. The ears did a little bit, and I'm like, well, yeah, Castroneves' hair is, I think, darker than that, so it didn't look like that. But the potential of having another, extreme sports athlete. I mean, again, we talked about Stanton Barrett a little bit earlier in the show here tonight, bringing somebody else in there, and just seeing what they can do. I mean, heck, I'm a big advocate of, hey, it's the ultimate, NASCAR could be the ultimate, show me test. I mean, you got to go out there. It doesn't matter what your background is or anything like that. You got to go out there and just be fast. And especially if it's going to be a non-chartered entry, which it sounds like it's going to be. I don't think 2311, they sounded interested in 3 charters. I don't know if they've received another or where they are on all that. But, if that's going to be the situation, I think that's going to be, exciting, and hopefully makes the duels more exciting too, and actually have some consequence to sending some teams home. I know there were reports earlier that they were going to have enough cars, obviously after last year where the Daytona 500 was the only race that had 40 cars, if memory serves. It seemed like it was. I don't think Talladega had 40 cars. But that it was very rare in that sense, or at least one that didn't have any DNQs in it. Hopefully it gets to be something that's going to be a bit more exciting and add a bit more intrigue to it, because I think that's so important. And I think another benefit to having the Daytona 500 start off the season, I think that's really good to have that uncertainty there about who are going to be the guys that are going to be starting things off and who's going to be a factor in all of that. So, yeah, we'll see. I think that's going to be a whole other deal on that. When will John Force attempt the name of the 500? Yeah, there you go, AW. Yeah, who knows? I don't know. You have ramps. Yeah, exactly. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Do you think that MBM enters a car for the 500? Jake Kohler? I don't know. That could be. It sounds like they've scaled back the Cup program. I know it really seemed to hurt the program when Yaley got passed on the last lap of his qualifying race last year, and then his teammate Timmy Hill ended up missing the show there too. That was real unfortunate. I think if things turned out differently and they got at least one of those cars in the race last year, they'd probably be okay with it. But it really seems like they've scaled back and just focused on their Xfinity program. It's not to say it's impossible. I mean, you remember from 500 Days, I mean, deals like the Stan Hoover effort with Morgan Shepherd or Carl Long's effort, his own, when he was driving with Thea Dixon, came together very late before the start of Speed Weeks. And we're still well outside of that. I mean, we haven't even done the Clash yet, much less 24 hours of Daytona. So it's very possible you could have a situation there where that gets brought into it. It's possible. I don't know if it's probable. That's kind of the situation, I think, at this point. And especially with Timmy Hill having a good run in the Xfinity race at Daytona last summer. I mean, yeah, there were wrecks he had to survive to get there, but, you know, let's give the man credit. He did and got a good run and very much could have been a factor going for the win there in the race that Jeremy Clements won. You know, they're probably going to put a lot of effort in their Xfinity program to try to have an outside shot at getting a win there. I mean, we'll see what the entry list looks like on for that series, but that's kind of where things are heading at this point. What about Biffle's team from last year? Yeah, I don't know. The New York Racing team, I haven't heard anything new on that end. We haven't seen him since, the spring Richmond race last year, which is a shame. I think John Cohen's program is kind of intriguing to me, that they seem to kind of, cobble together these different programs. Kind of reminds me of Hermie Sadler's program a little bit, when it had the different colleges represented on the cars, kind of like what Hermie did in 2003. It's unfortunate. I was hoping they'd make it out to Sears Point, because Cohen's team had been out there before with J.J. Yaley. I think it was 2015. And they always have really interesting paint schemes. I thought the last one they ran at Richmond actually kind of reminded me of Rusty Wallace's Kodiak car, which I thought was pretty cool. Obviously, a lot of differences, the next-gen car and the number and so forth. But at first glance, I thought it was pretty neat. So we'll see what happens over there. I really liked by the way, speaking of like paint schemes that look good, very happy with the update to the Raptor paint scheme that William Byron's going to run this year. The white accents on the side and kind of the highlights around the numbers and everything just looks so much better. I think the Raptor car last year was one of the worst paint schemes that was out there, right up there with Alex Bowman's Ally car. I thought those were both terrible. The Ally one, I'm not that crazy about. I like that they're doing like a night race paint scheme versus a day race one, but neither of those are really getting me that excited, that's for sure. But I think William Byron's Raptor car looks really nice. I think that's a nice step in a good direction. His Liberty University one, again, used white accents on the car, I think, pretty well. And that was another good detail there, too. So we'll see. I like the artist that's showed... Oh, excuse me. Long day at works, folks. Sorry about that. But... the Kevin Harvick paint scheme that showed the throwback to the white and red car from 2001. I'm more of a fan of the white and black, kind of like the pattern, the background of the show here today, because I think it was stark. I think it captured the emotions of the moment, and it was cool to have, a very, it was such a harsh transition from, of course, the black and silver car that Dale Earnhardt ran. I think it captured the emotions of that moment quite well. Not saying the paint scheme has to, but I think under the circumstances, it was very appropriate. I think the white and red scheme was a little garish for me. I thought it was kind of strange. I don't know what, I know I've been getting a lot of questions about that already, about if that was a factor of it looking like Brett Bodine's car, or if it was something internal with the Childress program, or if Teresa stepped in. I'm not sure exactly what the story was there. But I don't know. I've always been more of a fan of the black and white car. So I'm glad they actually did a diecast release of that there. Obviously, a lot of those are flying off the shelves now on eBay with the announcement this week with Harvick's impending retirement there. But that was definitely another factor there too. So we'll see. Let's see here. So we can do some trivia here to wrap up the show. For those of you tuning in here a little bit later, we did have a first, what was it? I think 15, 20 minutes of the show here, and we lost internet connection there with the storms rolling through here in California. But we'll just kind of wrap up here with some trivia questions there. And then any other questions you guys have, either from 500 days or something I haven't talked about here, whatever that's in the racing news, I'm certainly open to that. And we'll discuss that too. Definitely want to do the show tonight before this weekend. I know there's going to be a lot of, you got the NFL playoffs this weekend, and I didn't want to double book with that. Definitely going to be watching to see how the Bills do this weekend. And Last Pro is going to be pulling for the Vikings and the Giants game there after that on Sunday. So we'll see how that plays out on that end too. But we'll bring out the same Trivial Pursuit thing and do a couple questions here to wrap up the show. I got a couple things for show and tell. And we'll do that here, too, as we kind of wrap things up for this evening. Hope you had a great week here, everyone. And again, thank you so much for the support of the videos in 500 days. And hope you look forward to a lot of the things that we're looking to kind of get done this year and in the years to come here on the channel. It's very exciting for sure. And hope to get that going pretty soon. So, let's see here. So again, once again, the categories on this deal here are NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Go ahead and mention in the chat which category you'd like, and we'll do some questions from that to wrap up the show for this evening. Once again, the categories are NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. So we can kind of do that at the same time. Alrighty, got some Bengals fans here. Yeah, you guys are looking good too. I'm sure trying to bounce back from the stuff last year. You guys had a great charge last season, and obviously the friendship between you guys and the Bills there for sure. I can respect that for sure, especially given what happened with the whole Damar Hamlin deal at the same time. So we'll see. May the best team win. Or more power to them. So a couple things I have here for show and tell. So I talked a little bit in the first episode of 500 Days about a consequential effect of Dodge promoting their new car coming in and saying like, okay, it's this is going to be something really exciting, but it's not going to be in the 2000 season. It's going to be until 2001. And so the 2000 season was kind of treated a little bit secondary. And I still think that's true. It feels like that. In comparison, I picked up these cars a while back. Racing Champions did a similar promotion with the Chevy and Ford teams and the new body styles that they're debuting for the Chevy Monte Carlo and the Ford Taurus that year. And what's interesting is a nice little bit of reference to the 2000 season. They have these little car covers on them, these 64 scale ones with the Y2K and 2000 there. Definitely a bit of a throwback in that sense. The storyline, at least in terms of the manufacturers, were these new body styles that they were going to have for the Chevys and Fords. And so they had this die-cast set with the new Chevy and new Ford and kind of the show car versions of it. But they had both these rain covers on it. I'll show you the cars themselves. They have kind of this liquid color deal here. And so here's the Chevy here. Kind of has, again, the Y2K look, kind of this dark reddish scheme here. But, the big hype coming into that year was like, oh, look at this. We have these cars. They're going to look really different from 1999. Isn't this a big deal? And then literally Jim Julo comes out and, in 1999, just before the end of the season, about a month before, and suddenly this is like yesterday's news. So you can find like a ton of these online, and it's a little bit harder to find the Dodge stuff. At least it seems that way. because, yeah, I mean, at that point, nobody cared about, or at least not as many people cared about the Chevy and Ford models coming in. Here's the Ford one here. It's more of a chrome look to it here on the 2K Ford design here. Nice renders, though. I mean, Racing Champions actually upgraded their molds that year to a longer body style. If you look at like 1999 era Racing Champions diecast, they're very short and stubby. They have very big wheels, but they did a very different tooling in 2000, and this was kind of part of that too. And that was going to be, knowing the rivalry between different manufacturers, I'm sure that was something that they very much enjoyed, was being able to just get the drop on both these manufacturers. And it's like, okay, well, you got new cars. Isn't that quaint? We're bringing Dodge in, and we're signing all these different teams, including Richard Petty, and then suddenly that becomes the way bigger story. So I thought that was kind of a fun thing to revisit a bit. Here's let me bring the camera down here, kind of bring a little better view of those there. There we go. So, yeah, kind of an interesting deal there with that. And also another aspect of, the diecast they need to bring back, though. I mean, they still do the liquid color things these days. But again, I like that they were marketed. Racing Champions in particular had this line called Under the Lights, and they would just literally do the liquid color thing. But it would be for a lot of like the regular primary schemes. They did like John Andretti's car, Bill Elliott's, and so forth. And they promoted that because night racing used to be special. It used to be only had 4 or 5 of them a year, if that. It used to be just like one of the Bristols, one of the Richmonds, the Daytona night race, things of that nature. So they had a whole line of those. And then, of course, these little covers, like you saw earlier, literally having like a whole rain delay deal here. And then just these little fabric covers here. Looks like they're just, literally have the stitching on the inside of them there. Kind of a funny thing that they would actually have just for 64 scale cars. Incidentally, for these, it's kind of a great dust cover too. So it's something if you're the kind of person that likes to display a lot of them out someplace, they were good protected for that. Actually fit pretty snugly too. You kind of saw that on the first one here, but I thought that was kind of interesting. So a little bit of context there from the 2000 season. Another thing I wanted to kind of show at the same time, I featured this in the video. I do have the program here to the 2001 Duralube 400. This is the one that I showed the pictures of in part 4 here, as well as a couple of the features on Dale. Here is the card that was mentioned in it. Here's an idea about how big that was, indicating it was really, everything was printed, of course, before the Daytona 500 even happened. And then, of course, the card here that was illustrated in the video, I just scanned this directly into the video there from that, reflecting, honoring the life of Dale Earnhardt during the week afterwards. But basically everything else in here still has a lot of the preliminary late 2000, early 2001 news stories, including, again, Kurt Busch getting his rookie season. The Dale Earnhardt article, the Bucking Time and Quest for Record, is actually about the 10th page in the issue, too. It's one of the top stories in there, and, of course, features Dale Earnhardt's car actually going for the Noble 5 at Richmond the previous year. That was, again, you may recognize the paint scheme more from his Winston 500 victory at Talladega that year. That was back when you used to have whoever was the top 5 in a certain race that year would be eligible to win basically the Winston Million in the next race. And they had this really fun promotion where they would match a fan with each of the drivers, and they had a spotters stand where all of them would be standing next to each other. They'd be cheering on their guys. Especially at a place like Talladega, it was perfect for it. But Richmond was one of those races in 2000, so that's why you see his car with the bright reddish orange number on the roof and the rear spoiler. Something that really kind of I think would be fun to kind of bring back to kind of show the significance of finishing really well in a certain race. They've tried other versions of it. I remember Sprint tried to do something similar to this in 2011, the Sprint Summer Showdown, and they did that one time, and it really didn't get as much success. But that was another one to kind of look at. You got the old ads in here too. Hang on. Got the starting lineup sheet in here as well. And you got Dale Jarrett's ad here with the UPS paint scheme here at the same time. I mean, again, UPS put a tremendous amount of money into it. You talk a lot about the Dodge program But UPS, as you saw from 500 Days, they even had their CEO out there being giving the command to start engines. It was you had a lot of people that were just in this all the way. Here's a great picture of Kurt Busch in the John Deere car here. You saw Brian Holman had a great picture of him out of the car. Here's him getting in the car here, so you can kind of see that a little bit better. Back when they still ran the John Deere scheme late in the 2000 season. Drive the truck, exactly. Such a successful ad campaign that was. There you go. So you got the champ. They kind of have the driver profiles of this section here in order of championship points rankings. So you got Bobby Labonte, of course, the defending 2000 Series champion. Dale Earnhardt, who was second in the Spring Rockingham race in 2000, featured right after it here. I'll read the caption here, the Earnhardt one, because I don't think it got shown in the video. It says, at an age when some drivers are considering retirement, Dale Earnhardt is only getting stronger with a second-place finish in the NASCAR Winston Cup 2000 final point standings. In 2000, perhaps inspired by the presence of his son and namesake, the North Carolina resident challenged for a record 8th NASCAR Winston Cup title. He fell short, but that only will serve as additional motivation this season. The North Carolinian has never been one to back down. Winner of 75 races, 76 really, in a stellar career that began with the Rebestos Rookie of the Year award in 1979, Earnhardt has won 2 straight International Race of Champions titles and has banked about $41 million, more money than any other driver in NASCAR history. In 1987 and 1994, he was named American Driver of the Year. He's the fiercest competitor who ever sat in a race car, said fellow driver Jimmy Spencer. Born in 1951, Earnhardt drives the number 3 GM Goodwrench Service Chevrolet. Known as the Man in Black or the Intimidator, he has developed a reputation that transcends NASCAR to become one of the best-known athletes in the world. That definitely sums it up right there. Kind of looking at some of the other sections in here as well. Well, I mentioned Northern Light in the previous video, but Kevin LePage was sponsored by him in the early 2000s. Here's kind of a look at one of the paint schemes that they ran. Jeff Burton had that scheme on his number 9 car in the Busch Series, what's now the Xfinity Series, of course. And there, of course, his last car, all-time record holder Jeff Green, right after his 2000 championship battle there. So you kind of get a view of both of those. Definitely some interesting paint schemes for the time period there, too. Let's see. We use a lot of the driver pictures in this in the first part as well. Here's a feature on Ryan Newman, and of course the old Altel Ford. As featured in the 500 Days Part 4, Rockingham was the scene of Newman's first Busch Series start, driving the number 02 car there, the same paint scheme he'd run in the Cup Series. In the next episode, in the Las Vegas one, you'll see his second Cup Series start. His debut was at Phoenix the previous fall, which is actually the site of his most recent Cup start, just a couple of years ago there in the number 6 car. So that'll be another one to kind of discuss coming up there. So that'll be one of the storylines, kind of a little preview of things to come here in the next episode. And then, yeah, a lot more of the features and so forth in there. So, so then again, definitely the program from this one and the entry list on this. Let's see. Yeah, it's actually got the starting lineup sheet for the both the Busch race and the Cup race here. You can kind of see, let me bring that out of the light. There you go. Got those there. It's interesting. It's more of the numerical starting list, starting lineup sheet instead of the actual first to last there. But yeah, obviously having Kevin Harvick in the 29 car as a part of that feature as well. So we'll get into trivia here in just a second. Let's see what categories we have here at the same time. And then we'll wrap up that portion here for the show tonight. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. I know it was a little bit late notice of doing the show here this week, but I definitely wanted to kind of tie things up a little bit from the video this week and give a little bit more detail about what the plans are coming up here. And yeah, a lot of exciting things happening. And I think we'll find out more information on that as we go along here very shortly. Okay, I see a couple for teams. I see 3 for teams, 2 for tracks, 2 for the wild card. Okay, it looks like teams might be the leader on that one. So that'd be a different one. Logan Detweiler, who's your team in the playoffs? Absolutely the Bills, for sure. I think the Niners are going to be very tough, though. Urinating Tree had a video where he predicted Bills-Niners. And again, I think that's probably a fair assessment. I think that's going to be very tough. Kansas City is always tough. I'm sure the Bills are waiting to kind of get that going. Whether or not that's going to be the neutral site in Atlanta, that'll be something. Been kind of watching a bit more of that than racing here the last couple of weeks. That's usually kind of the rhythm of my season there, depending on how things play out. But we'll find out. Yeah, we'll do some teams questions here on this, and then we'll kind of wrap that up here for the evening. And again, if you guys have any other questions, don't hesitate to let me know here. Alrighty, teams. Here we go. First question. Who sponsored Darrell Waltrip from 1975 through 1980? Who sponsored Darrell Waltrip from 1975 through 1980? Don't look it up. Try to guess. There we go. Who sponsored Darrell Waltrip from 1975 through 1980? That is the question. Yeah, they sponsored the IRL, Northern Light. Yep, you're right. Definitely catching that too. There we go. Who sponsored Darrell Waltrip from 1975 through 1980? We got guesses for Gatorade and Tide. Was not born yet. Yeah, you and me both. Who sponsored Darrell Waltrip from 1975 through 1980? The answer is indeed Gatorade. Gatorade is the correct answer. It's driving that 88 car there. Alrighty. Next question. What is the last name of brothers Bill and Jim, who were 2/3 of Diecast Racing? What is the last name of brothers Bill and Jim, who were 2/3 of Diecast Racing? Yeah, Snotslinger. I can see how you'd be confused by the Gatorade thing in the early 80s. I mean, he did say 1980, so he ran it that first year of the decade, too. But yeah, he ran green and white cars for a very long time. I mean, the Gatorade car and the Mountain Dew car looked very similar in a lot of respects. And I think that was interesting. Obviously, different teams, different numbers, but probably about the same color scheme, really. A lot more green on the 11 cars along the way, but that's another way to kind of look at it, too. What is the last name of brothers Bill and Jim, who were 2/3 of Diecast Racing? You got Terminal Transport Logan there. Yeah, I was thinking that at first, actually, too. Because, yeah, that was one of, if not the first sponsor that Darrell Waltrip had. But he was in the Gatorade car by the latter part of the 70s there. Alrighty, what's the last name of brothers Bill and Jim, 2/3 of Diecast Racing? The answer is indeed Gardner. A couple of you got that there. AW, Jake Kohler, Adam Lemarese, Wade Stell. Yep, Gardner indeed is the correct answer. Yeah, see if the third question is also going to be Diecast. It is not. Next question. How many years did Bill Elliott drive for Junior Johnson? How many years did Bill Elliott drive for Junior Johnson? That's our next question. How many years did Bill Elliott drive for Junior Johnson? Okay, I guess is it 9 and 4 and 3 and 3 and 3. Okay. How many years did Bill Elliott drive for Junior Johnson? 3.5. Okay, let's see. How many years did Bill Elliott drive for Junior Johnson? We got a lot of guesses already. We'll go ahead and jump right into it. The answer is indeed 3. 3 is correct. So most of you got that one. Charles Peterson Jr., looks like you were the first one on that one. Right on. Let's see. Let's see. That's a little too easy. Okay, next question here, folks. What team won the Mike Rich Memorial Award of Excellence in 1993? What team won the Mike Rich Memorial Award of Excellence in 1993? Excuse me. What team won the Mike Rich Memorial Award of Excellence in 1993? Yeah, 92 is the only really good one. Yeah, it's true, Edison. Yeah, for sure. That's kind of the unfortunate thing. I mean, and then, I don't know if you've ever seen like the clip from the 93 Talladega race, the first race that the Yates team ran after the passing of Davey Allison. But they mentioned, Ken Squire mentioned in the opening, Bill Elliott hadn't led a lap the entire season to that point. And this was a race in July, late July. So that was quite a ways into it, which is pretty surprising given the fact that Elliott was on the front row for the 500, but ultimately got in a wreck with his teammate, Sterling Marlin, as well as Ernie Irvan there, and ended up taking him out of the event at that point. But it just shows how much things had changed in that 1 year. The fact that 92, the Fords were so dominant. Bill Elliott was a big part of that. Unfortunately, really had a bad stretch towards the end of the year. The rest is history, for sure. But 93 was very different in that sense. Maybe the problems at the end of 92 were a sign of how much they'd struggle in 1993. You probably could argue that. But for whatever reason, the wheels just literally came off there. And the Junior Johnson effort with Elliott just wasn't as much of a super team as people were hoping for coming into the year. Certainly the start of the year, the 4 straight wins were definitely something to look at, but just didn't have the momentum for a 29 race season. What team won the Mike Rich Memorial Award of Excellence in 1993? We got a lot of guesses here. AK Racing, Penske, Hendrick, Earnhardt's Flying Aces, Yates, Wood Brothers. Who was Cole Trickle driving for that year? All right, here we go. What team won the Mike Rich Memorial Award of Excellence in 93? The answer is Robert Yates Racing. Robert Yates Racing. So, Logan, you got that one. I think you were the only one that guessed Yates. No, AW. You guessed Yates first. There you go. Robert Yates. Here we go. Next question here, folks. What make of car did Sterling Marlin drive from 1987 through 1990? What make of car did Sterling Marlin drive from 1987 through 1990? Right. What make of car did Sterling Marlin drive from 1987 through 1990? Wikipedia has nothing. You're looking it up. Oh, try to guess. Try to guess. It's more sporting that way. Plus, people in here are pretty fast. We get these answers up here pretty quick. See, Charles Peterson Jr. is all over it. Blake Thiemann and Kevin Love, yeah. You got all kinds of manufacturers popping up, Oldsmobiles and Pontiacs and Toyotas and Chevys. What make of car did Sterling Marlin drive from 1987 through 1990? The answer may surprise you. It's Oldsmobile. Oldsmobile's the correct answer. Charles Pearson was driving for Billy Hagan during that stretch. Correct. Oldsmobile is the correct answer. Charles, you were the first one on that. Let's see. Let's see. Alrighty. We'll do one more question for the evening here, folks. Here's the last question for tonight. Now remember, this is the late 90s, so keep that in mind. It's like 98, 99, thereabouts. So the answer to this today would probably be something very different. So without further ado, who is nicknamed Mr. Ford? That's the whole question. Who is nicknamed Mr. Ford? 500 days is still in the works, Logan. It's going to take a little time there. And yep, lemons are cool. Yep, the Frankie Muniz driving the old CGR car. That's tremendous. You were talking about that a little bit earlier on the show. Yeah, that's a tremendous story. And it's fascinating to hear his response to it, too. Apparently, he was discussing it in a interview earlier today. So kudos on that. Who is nicknamed Mr. Ford is the question. I'll give it a little bit more time, get everybody's answers in here. We got Jack Roush, Dale Jarrett, Mark Martin, Elliott, Henry. Yeah, well, I mean, literally, it's a nickname, though, so it's probably not literally Henry Ford. But good guess, though. Jimmy Spencer, Ricky Rudd, Dale Jarrett, Tom Grossi. There you go. We're getting all the fun answers now. Who is nicknamed Mr. Ford? Yeah, I've never heard this one either. It seems like it could be too many people. I think that's what makes it a fun last question for the evening. Who is nicknamed Mr. Ford? Alrighty. This unit's from 98. Correct. Yeah, late 90s. Who is nicknamed Mr. Ford? The answer is Jack Roush. Jack Roush. Few of you got that one. In fact, Blake Thiemann looked like you got that really quick. I think you were the first one to guess. Yeah, you got it. Snot Slinger, you got it too. Edison Bogus, you got it as well. Anthony Green. There you go. Yes, indeed. So there you go. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in tonight. Again, big thanks to everyone for supporting 500 Days. It's been a tremendous project there. It was something that it kind of took over most of last year in producing it. But I'm so happy to have it out there and have people be able to talk about it and raise some interesting questions about it. I think it's a very relevant story towards the current trajectory of the sport. A lot of the controversies about the next-gen car last year. Again, that got guided my hand in making the 4th episode there and not just doing it on the lead up to the Daytona 500, but also talking about that as well. And I hope that that'll be able to continue as 500 Days continues as a series later this year. So a lot of exciting things coming up here. Big thanks to those of you in the Patreon once again. Very excited to be able to share more material with you guys. Got a lot of newsletters and everything I'm mailing out here too. So you should have that very soon as at the same time. And yeah, so that'll be it for right now. Our next show, I'm not sure if we'll do one next week. At the latest, we'll do one around the Clash here at the beginning of February, which is coming right up. I'm not sure if we'll do one for the 24 Hours of Daytona. Maybe we'll work something out on that. We'll figure things out here. But I don't know, maybe do a live watch along or something like that. That might be kind of fun. Maybe just for at least a portion of it or something. But yeah, we'll figure something out. But stay tuned to the Twitter feed at LastCar on Brock for more updates on that. The website, of course, is lastcar.info, and the Patreon is patreon.com/LastCar on Brock. So everybody stay safe out there. Have a great week out there, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for your support.